All right. Hey, welcome back, everybody. Episode 2 of Inside the Mind. Hope you guys enjoyed the first one on the St. Johns River. I enjoyed making it, kind of breaking it down for you guys, giving you a little bit different twist on tournament recaps and tournament edits. And we're going to jump right into Lake Okeechobee. You know, we drove about 3 hours down the road from the St. Johns. No break in between the first event and Lake Okeechobee, so no time to really sulk and get too down about ourselves after St. John's, even though it was a pretty tough finish, not really how I wanted to start the season. But thankfully the next week we had a chance at redemption, and I like Okeechobee. It reminds me of home a lot more on our natural lakes compared to the St. Johns River. And so I felt like it was a good opportunity for me to bounce back, just get in the right frame of mind, try and pick up some points, make a little money before we come home back to Minnesota. And had a decent practice, to kind of set the stage for weather. We had that kind of major cold front during the St. John's tournament, and it was cold down on Okeechobee too. There had been a warm-up in Florida like we talked about a couple weeks prior, so I believe a big wave of fish had moved up. Big cold front the week before we got to the lake, and then more stable warming conditions throughout the tournament on Okeechobee. And in practice, I found a pretty strong swim jig bite. We had a bit more wind in practice, and so that allowed me to really cover a bunch of water and get more of a reaction bite from these fish that were either staging or they're already up in their spawning areas. And I found a really good bite with the 5/16 ounce swim jig and then a 4-inch Crush City Mayor on the back. So big profile, big boot tail. Was able to cover a bunch of water doing that, whether it was shallow grass flats with some eelgrass or even running that bait into old cattail clumps or woody debris. Okeechobee's been the victim of many hurricanes in the past few years, and they've had high water that's kind of ravaged a bunch of these shallow areas. And there's old bushes or little trees, little willow trees that are left over in some of these open areas where the cattails are gone. And so there's a bunch of woody debris, I guess you might call it, up shallow too. And just running that bait into it, more of a reaction bite, I was able to generate a bunch of bites in practice. And it had to have wind on it though. So in calm conditions, it just really wasn't the deal. But if I had a little bit of breeze on those areas, I could generate some bites with that swim jig. And we'll kind of dive into it on why that was important in the tournament. So I hate to say it, but day one, I had some issues with my GoPro. So we didn't have any day one footage, unfortunately. So I'm just going to give you a quick recap of how day one went. I ended up with 11 pounds, 15 ounces, so just about 12 pounds for the day, which I wasn't super happy with, to be honest, after the practice I had. I started in an area on the north end that had a bunch of clean, good-looking water, and in practice it had a nice breeze blowing into that area, and I got some big bites on a swim jig. And that's where I started. I caught a couple fish. I think I left that area with 4 fish. There were a ton of boats around. Anytime you find pretty looking water in Florida, you're pretty much going to be fishing around a bunch of boats. So I left that area. I caught a couple on a swim jig. I think I caught one on a frog and maybe one flipping in that area. So I left that, went to a secondary area that I found, which was a lot muddier water, but I actually got some decent bites in that area. And there were a couple points there too that had some schooling fish, generally smaller fish. But I felt like I could at least fill out my limit there. So I went there, filled out my limit real quick, I believe flipping and on a frog. And then we had very little wind that day. So I actually had to flip quite a bit. And I generated a 3 1/4 pound bite and like a 2.5 pound bite flipping. And that was my day. I had just about 12 pounds and I finished up in 51st place after day one. So just outside the cut, kind of like St. John's, not a terrible start, but not really where you want to be either. I really expected to have a better day after the practice I had, but the lack of wind that day really hurt my swim jig bite. I had some bigger fish wake the bait and just never get it. I'd see them come all the way to the boat, they'd turn off on it. And I think that's why I had to flip to get some of my better bites that day. So I was happy with my adjustment that I made to get my better quality bites flipping, but still wasn't the day I was looking for. So we'll dive right into day 2. We had a fog delay to start that day. So just a bit of footage here. on the morning of day 2. It was about an hour and a half fog delay. So we had plenty of time to mill around, sit around, chat with some of the people nearby.
Property taxes, so you can't get a landowner's tag? No, people
got to know the marshal in the boat next to me pretty well. But eventually we do take off here after quite a wait. Fortunately, I had a long day on day 2. I was one of the last boats out. And so even though we were delayed by an hour and a half, you know, I still had plenty of time to put together a bag. But I wanted to start on these points that had those fish on them in my secondary area, just to get a small limit in the boat and calm my nerves on a shorter day due to that fog delay. So, you know, these fish are not big at all, but I get 5 in the boat probably in 20 minutes, which when you're under a shorter day and you're kind of under the gun with the time clock, it definitely helps to put a limit in the boat, at least calm the nerves and guarantee some points out of the deal. And was kind of my thought process here. These fish were schooling on little pin minnows or little fry of some sort, and tiny fish, but at least got a limit in the boat. And I wasn't expecting to get much of a quality bite in these areas. There I actually did get a quality one. That one was about a 3.5 pounder. And I was not getting many big bites the day before, so to lose that one was kind of a bummer. Did get a couple small upgrades here. Moved over to another point nearby. Continue to catch small fish after small fish. I probably got like 6, maybe 7 pounds. And this is actually the area where I caught my better quality ones on day 1 flipping. I knew these points had small fish on them, so I wanted to get a limit, and then I was going to flip around in this area too. I caught a 3 and a 4 in here in practice. Here flipping to a mat. Another quality bite, and it comes right off. Here's that woody debris I'm talking about. I actually caught a 4-pounder off that little chunk of brush there in practice, just winding a swim jig right through it. But that's kind of what it looked like. There's a bunch of it in this area, along with some cattails. And this was pretty close to where I had that 3 1/4 bite on day 1. So I figured I'd start in this area, flipping, instead of going back to the area that wasn't productive on day 1. And spent a lot of time here, milling around, flipping, winding a swim jig, chatterbait. Ultimately, don't catch any quality. And so this was kind of gut check time for me. You know, I'm probably down in the 60s or 70s in the standings at this point. You know, got a limit, but nothing major. And I decided to go to an entirely new area that I hadn't been to on day 1. I kind of left this area alone, hoping to save it, and get in here thinking this might be my best option at some better quality. I caught a couple 3-pounders in here in practice, and it's kind of a big backwater pond, and then off of that pond is another offshoot of a backwater, and we're working our way into that offshoot right now, just kind of feeling it out, seeing how it is. There was one other boat back in here. Brock was in there with me, Brock Mosley. We were both kind of winding a swim jig around, but he was the only other boat that was back in this area when I got in here on day 2. And so just moving around, trying to feel it out, hoping to generate a bigger bite, really. We get a small upgrade here, but I show you guys this to kind of set the stage for the rest of the tournament. This area becomes pretty key. Brock and I were just catching mainly small males in this area, but I've learned what that can mean in Florida. You know, you catch a bunch of males in one area the day before and you get nice warming conditions, the females are not far behind. So I'm kind of working my way out of here, just trying to generate a bigger bite, and honestly thinking that I might leave this area, and then we finally get a bite that changes our whole tournament.
Yes. Oh, yes. Oh, thank God.
That's what you need in Florida. Just one swing of the bat can change your whole event, and we were super fortunate to get it this week in Okeechobee.
8.5. Oh my God. 8.5. Oh my God.
So this pretty well had me committed to, okay, I think we need to do a little more flipping. You know, we did have a cold night leading up to this day and not a ton of wind. And I think that's maybe what put some of these fish under these mats this day, you know, this particular day. We get another bite here, hung up in the root system of this island. Ultimately get it out, and it's another quality one. This ended up being like a 3.5 pounder. So now I know for sure that I'm moving on to the weekend. We got a couple more hours till we're due in, so I'm gonna commit myself to this area and just flip the rest of the day. You know, flip these dead cattail mats. I had not seen anybody fish these since I got in there at about 10:30, 11, so I thought maybe could generate a bite in these. Sure enough, we get one, but I'll lose that fish. I saw that fish come up and get my bait as like a 3-4 pounder. This one thing I was just paying attention to in this area, you know, like I said, Brock was in there. There were some locals in there too. And then I did see Maddie Wong come in there about midday. So as I'm flipping around, you know, in Florida, you're always fishing around boats. And I really try and keep an eye on where those other boats are, what stretches have or have not been hit yet. And I think that can be really key when you're fishing in a crowd. And so I'm trying to fish banks that no one else has fished since I've been in there anyways. I finally come across this stretch that I've been keeping my eye on. I haven't seen anybody fishing it. Just flipping down the edge. Kind of caught me off guard. Short little hook set there. I apologize, you guys, we can't really see this fish well or what kind of cover I was fishing, but ends up being another giant 6.5 pounder. Super fortunate to generate another big bite, and now all of a sudden we're up to, you know, 20-21 pounds for the day. Trying to be quiet, kind of keep that fish low. There's like 2 or 3 other locals right behind me at the moment. And now I'm just trying to expand on the water that I've fished.
More upgrades, Brock? Yeah, I got me one more.
And Brock kind of passes me on the way out of this area.
I'll let me get the 5. Dude, I caught 2 giants. Did you? Really? How big are they? An 8 and a 6. Really? In there? Yeah. Awesome, man. Good. You might want to start flipping if you need a big one. I mean, just right on the edge? Yeah. Huh? Yeah. I've only had 3 bites doing it. It's pretty boring, but when you get a bite, it's been better. Like another one. I was fishing to go to the lake. You're fixing to go what? I was fishing to go to the lake. I'm not due into 4:30. Well, you might try it. What size weight? 3/4. Sorry to mess it. I mean, I could just not tell you. Oh yeah, I appreciate you telling me. Yeah.
I figured there wasn't anything like I've caught dink after dink after dink. And
I know. I made one pass through a stretch and I was gonna leave, and then I caught that big one.
Really?
Yeah.
An 8 and a 6.
Yeah.
How much weight you got?
Like 20. All right, good luck.
So anyways, Brock heads back in there to try and catch a big one.
No, they're like right on the edge.
I mean, like, are they
Oh, basically from these first 2 points back. I'm just messing around out here to see if I can't get. You did? Okay.
Anyways, so I'm trying to expand here. I run into Brock and kind of give him a tip that, hey, you might want to start flipping. He needs one more big one really to get into the weekend cut. So he turns around, goes back in there. Ultimately, I never get another bite. So I wheel out of there, try and give myself plenty of time to get back and get checked in after a day, day that you dream of in Florida, getting 2 big bites, and end up pulling up next to Polnick here and get his report of, I think I got a big bag with 21. I think he had 34.
I had a 927 and a 930 and a 7 3/4.
So I'm just cracking up at his big bag.
It was so hard to stop. Like I might be able to break.
So we had a good day too, right? 2 big bites, super fortunate to get those bites. In Florida, that's what you need though to carry you. But man, it jumped me probably from the mid 70s up into 9th place. So we're sitting in 9th place after day 2, get to go out on day 3. Now I've learned a bit more about that area. We had a warm night leading into day 3. Like I said before, Brock and I caught a bunch of males at the end of day 2 in that area. And last time when I was on Okeechobee, I learned a pretty hard lesson about how areas can change overnight. And what I mean by that is I caught a really big one at the end of day 1, the last time we were down here on Okeechobee, in an area, fresh fish. It was real white. And I never went back there in the morning of day 2. Well, come to find out, they smashed them in that area on the morning of day 2. Those fish had moved in overnight. These Florida fish, they move in and they move out within like 24, 48 hour periods, it seems like. And if you can catch that wave moving in, you can get healthy in a hurry. So I knew what I was doing to start day 3. I kind of had seen that trend of all those males in that area. We had a warm night, some stable weather. I had a hunch that maybe there were some females moving into this area. So I had to go back and check it first thing in the morning on day 3. So here we are, giving a report how the week's been going so far. Take off here, we got a cameraman on the boat, top 10. It's always nice to have a camera. Means you're having a decent week.
And what a Florida swing we have had here. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Got Brian Evie in the boat with me. Cameraman, he's an awesome dude. We had good positive vibes to start the day, which is always nice. So anyways, we make the run over to this area. I know right where I'm starting. We had a warm night, but we had a bit of a north wind. So it wasn't super warm, I guess you might say. The wind I'm talking about. We had a bit of a chillier morning. So I just got in there kind of in the mouth of it, trying to feel it out a bit. I'm still kind of in the mouth of this pond, kind of explaining to Brian that, hey, I'm probably going to move into this little backwater chute at some point, but wanted to get a feel for things kind of on the outside first, and ultimately never generated a bite until we got closer to this pond. Here I lose a pretty small one on the swim jig with the 4-inch Mayer. Hook up again, lose that one. So at this point I'm kind of thinking maybe I need to shorten my presentation down, make it a little more compact. So I put a Crush City cleanup craw on the back instead of that Mayer, and sure enough it pays off right away.
Oh jeez, that's a bad landing job. That's a better than average. Hook just fell off. Well, that wasn't the most pretty catch, but we're on the board. A little AT swim jig, cleanup craw. We've had some short strikes this morning and just went from a 4-inch mayor to a little cleanup craw in the back, just a little smaller presentation, and got our first one. I'm happy with that. That's a better than average for the week. Yeah, 2.5. We'll get our day started. Just got a weird kind of cooler wind this morning. We've had some bites, but nothing in the boat yet. So it might just take a little time for these Florida bass to wake up this morning, but I'll take that to start.
So we keep wheeling the swim jig around. We're in this little backwater pond, and this bite really kind of solidifies what I'm going to be doing for probably the next couple hours for sure.
Yes. Heck yeah, dude. That's the kind we need. All terrain, cleanup craw. Look at that. Pre-spawner. Dude, maybe they moved in here overnight. That's a good one. Came right out from underneath that little mat. That's a clean looking fish. That's maybe a little rubbing going on, but that's the kind we need. Yes. Yeah, that's 4 1/4. Heck yeah. Still some bass.
So our
in the
hunch
backwater
is
pond.
kind of paying off here. It's coming true.
I was really kind of doubting it with that north wind we got this morning, but I don't think we put a clip on
Kind of
it.
had a hunch that there was maybe some females that could flood into this area because of all those males in a stable night, and that bite definitely kind of told me, hey, we need to hunker in here a bit.
Oh, what was that? Did you see that? Golly. Yeah. I don't know if I came across one of those tilapia. No, freaking giant. They're a good one. Yes. Dude, they made a move. Some better ones moved in here. Sweet. Gosh, that thing looked huge at first. That's a quality one though. Another healthy one, it looks like. Maybe. Thank you. Alright, swim jig. That was cool. Big old wake on that thing. There's some quality in here this morning. 3-pounder. Sweet. I'll take it. Heck yeah. On the swimmer again. Swim jig. Alright. It's a good start.
We got a little more breeze in this backwater too, and I don't know if that's what generated some of these bites, these bigger bites. I'm not really sure. I miss a fish there. I kind of mill around in that area, and then I come back to that same spot where I missed that one. And I don't know if this is the same fish or a different one, but get another real quality bite on some woody debris, some isolated cover. Yes. Yes, dude. Good one. Swim jig. Right. Another chunk. Now at this point, I'm happy with my decision to start here in the morning. We got a 4-pounder, a couple 3-pounders.
We missed a bite over there earlier. That could have been. Yes.
Giving ourselves a really good chance of making it all the way to the top 10 on Sunday.
310. Swim jig. Clean up craw.
Nice job, man.
Thanks. Sweet. Right on this isolated stuff. All of our fish on that swim jig today have common little stretches with a hair breeze on it, which makes
So here I'm talking to the camera, kind of explaining what's going on. You know, we're fishing isolated stuff with this swim jig with a bit of breeze on it. It seems like that's where we're getting our better bites. You know, if there's calm water, I'm not able to generate a bite as well with that swim jig. So I'm just telling the camera and folks at home that, hey, I need to keep an eye on that and fish the wind, you hear some guys say. And that can be a big deal with that swim jig in terms of generating some bigger bites. Here's just another small male and a bit of an offshoot from that backwater. Nothing crazy, but gives us our limit.
okay.
Here we don't got a great view of what's going on, but you kind of get a gist of what happens here. Thing smoked the swim jig in about a foot of water.
Playing a fresh group moved in overnight. Look how fresh that fish is. Oh, he's rubbing a little bit. That helps.
Nice job.
That might get us to the weekend. That's when they got no water. They eat that thing, it's crazy. 3-pounder. Alright, that might put us into the top 10. Now we got a decent bag.
That was a key fish. I feel like, you know, now we may have made it to our first championship Sunday for the year. We get a few more bites here in this backwater. Ultimately, nothing that helps cull up. And I still feel like we got a great base. And now I got the rest of the day to go flip a bunch of this cover and maybe generate, even if we just generate one bite, you know, I'd be happy with it.
Catch those 8 and that 6 in here? Yeah, I caught the 8 on this island.
That was Matty Wong there. He had come into there kind of mid-morning. He asked me if I caught those big ones the day before in this area, and I said, yeah, I caught that 8-pounder on this island. So sure enough, I'm going to fish this island again, generate an 8-pound bite there the day before. You definitely want to hit it a couple times. And man, I work it really thoroughly around the whole thing. Once here, I think I hit it again in the afternoon. And I flip and flip and flip around this whole backwater pond, hoping and praying that I'm just going to generate one more big bite like we did the day prior. And we get some bites doing it, but nothing that ever helps us. And so little discouraged on the flipping bite on day 3, and we put a lot of time into it that day, and it never pays off for us, which just goes to show how fortunate we were on day 2 to get those bites. So ultimately, this is probably like 1 o'clock. We buzz out of this area, and my idea is to go back to that point where I caught him schooling on day 2 to see if we can get a big bite.
Oh, that's a better one. Oh, yes, dude. Heck yeah. That might be
we get one almost 3 pounds here, which
on our little schooling
was
point.
bigger than anything I'd caught in that area besides losing that one yesterday. At least on those points. I caught some decent ones flipping, but not right on those points.
Guess so. That's the biggest one, and besides the one I lost there yesterday, which could be this one, who knows. Oh yeah, that's a helper. 2 pounds, 14 ounces.
So one last nice little upgrade on that point. Wasn't sure if I'd get a better quality one there, but happy to get that bite. And back in to check in, give a little recap, get to weigh in, and that's a wrap on our day for day 3. Super happy with it. You know, we had, I think, 17, 18 pounds that day. My hunch in that area kind of came true. Some better quality fish moved in overnight and were set up there waiting for us the next morning. Made a championship Sunday, first one of the year. We're going out in 7th place, so we bumped up a couple spots from the day before. And at this point, Polnick's so far ahead of everybody that he's going to be very tough to reach. So we're kind of aiming for 2nd place here. But honestly, anything can happen in Florida. You can catch a 30, 35 pound bag out there, and a couple guys could stumble, and you never know what might happen. But just going to kind of go out and enjoy the last day in Florida and see what we can make happen. I kind of know right where I'm going to go. I'm going to start back in that little backwater pond and just see how the day unfolds. Get to talk to Mercer for a bit.
Having a great week here this week, and you got to go home. You told me you're got 1 pair of underwear left and just 1 ration worth of food, so it's time to head home.
I was telling Mercer I got 1 pair of boxers, about 1 ration of food left, so it's just about time to hit the road. And whenever that happens, you know you've had a good long week. And enjoyed Okeechobee for sure, but 1 more day and that was just about time to head back. So got Brian in the boat again with me for day 4. We had a fun day on day 3 and really just looking to go out and enjoy the day, see what we can make happen. We had another warm, stable night, so have high hopes that maybe some more fish have moved into this area. They seem to be just kind of replenishing, which is always something to pay attention to in the spring. These areas can, you know, replenish with fresh fish by the hour, really. And so we kind of feel our way into this backwater area, start at the mouth of it again. Ultimately don't really get any bites out in the main part of it, but we finally get into this backwater. Generate a tiny keeper here to start our day. Little buck. Get back to the small bucks in here. Barely. There you go. Little rat. Keep wheeling our way back in here. Pretty much the same program as day 3. Generate a little bit better quality there. There are a few in here still. It's a nice healthy one. We finally get to this stretch that we fished a bunch the 2 days prior. This one just boils up on it, up in about a foot of water on the swim jig.
Yeah, dude. Heck yeah. That's a big one. Did you see that wake? Man, that bite is so fun. Winding a swim jig in the dirt. What a chunk. Yes. Okay, there are still a few in here. Yes. Gosh, that is a freaking blast. Yes. 4.5. Heck yeah. If you guys have not wound around an all-terrain tackle swim jig and a Crush City cleanup craw in the springtime, you need to do so. You will have a ball. Look at that thing. Maybe spawning up there. She's got a few marks on her fins.
So there's confirmation for us that, okay, some fish are still funneling in here, and we're gonna run the same program, and we make our rounds in this little offshoot again, and we get a couple bites, you know, a couple 1.5 to 2 pounders, But those 3 to 4 pounders in this area are kind of eluding us. The ones that were kind of there more so on day 3 in the morning. We're able to fill out our limit back here. But it's got me wondering what I should do the rest of the day. You know, we generated the one big bite. But everything else is just kind of back to small males. So not sure if it's just a matter of timing as these things kind of move in throughout the day, but we get a halfway decent bite here, upgrade a little bit. I'm thinking maybe I need to, it's almost a 3 pounder, maybe I need to move out a bit, you know, go fish this island, fish some of this isolated stuff. Once again, we go fish 8 pound town. No such luck on this island. And really starting to think I might flip my way out of here, throw a swim jig at a few targets, and then move along. So we keep flipping this island. Kind of give a little update to the camera here of, you know, what we think we're going to be doing.
Stretches. See if any fish have pulled up to these isolated targets and punch a little bit more around it here.
I said throw a swim jig on these targets and punch a little bit on our way out, unless we generate a bite. Here we hook up with an absolute giant, probably a 4 to 6, 7 pounder, and try and boat flip it like a dummy. Hook pops right out. That's maybe one of the worst lost boat flip decisions I've ever had on the Elite Series. Thankfully, that happened on day 4 and not on day 2. If you're going to lose a big one like that, you hope it happens after you've made the cut. But it kind of gave me an idea of, okay, maybe something's materializing here. You know, dumb decision to try and boat flip that thing. I think I got a little overconfident after flipping a 6 pounder in the boat on day 2 and some 4s on day 3. Got a little overconfident that I could boat flip that thing, and it popped right out. As you saw in the slow-mo there, that was a quality fish. But we keep moving along, fishing these isolated targets that I've fished a lot on day 2 and day 3, and all of a sudden a fresh wave of fish just seemed to move up.
Swim jig. Oh, you guys were just talking about how we were wanting to flip, and I lost a big one on a swim jig a second ago, so we started picking this stuff apart with a swim jig. We got a nice breeze and just caught a tank. Well, we might be hanging in here for a bit longer than I thought. These last couple of bites are big ones. Another 4.5. Gosh, that other one we lost was about this size, if not bigger. But that's a nice little swim jig, the cleanup craw. Beauty of a coal there. Good job. Freaking fun. That thing is just
Trying to get out of it.
like the explosion.
Might as well catch another one.
I guess so.
Yeah.
So now we're in a little better mood. We kind of redeemed ourselves after losing that one. And they're biting. We popped another one off here. I don't know, that one must look like about a 3 pounder. And I just go back through all this isolated stuff that I've fished a bunch the couple days before and had very few bites on it. And Some small males are moving on to it. You know, we get like, what was that? 1, 2, 3, 4. It's our 5th bite we've had on this stuff in about a half hour. So all of a sudden a new batch kind of moved up, and that's definitely something to pay attention to in the springtime. You know, if you've had a bite in an area, don't be afraid to revisit it an hour or so later, because there could be a fresh batch that moved up. Here I learned my lesson not to bolt flip them.
Holy crap. There's a fresh batch that moved in here, you guys. Gosh. Another good one. This is incredible. I was literally about to flip it. He stretches in here and then get out. And I was throwing my swim jig along just in between stretches, and these are fresh ones that are just getting here. That's another 4.5. Unbelievable. See how clean they are? Full of eggs. Maybe just pulling up the spawn. Wow. What a bite. Old swim jig and clean up craw.
It's one thing to pay attention to in the spring as well as,
we've had like 6 bites in about a half hour.
you know, what do those fish look like? What do those females look like? Are they clean and white?
Thank you. Great job.
Do they got marks on them? Are their tails bloody? All these better quality fish that were females were clean looking, which tells me they just got there, you know, within probably the hour or 2 hours prior. Fortunately, on day 4, nobody had fished any of this stuff all day, and so it kind of had a chance to bake in the sun a bit and warm up, and a fresh batch definitely moved in. And so you can see I kind of circle around this area a few different times, just hoping that fresh fish are moving in.
Yeah, they're almost done with it.
And I decided to go in this backwater once more before we leave for the day.
Yes, dude. Yes. What's
Get fortunate to generate another big one.
Good decision.
Right on the stretch that we had fished the day prior and that morning, actually.
All right, man. I don't know that we can. It'd be hard to leave this area. Gosh, they're just flooding in here. Right where that 2-pounder came yesterday. 4 1/4. It's one of the best swim jig bites I've ever been on. This water is just stabilizing and getting right. These fish are so clean coming in here. This is fun, dude. Good job.
So we got about probably an hour left, and you know, I just figure I'm gonna stay in here till the end of the day, do a little flipping, see if we can't generate a big bite. And ultimately, you know, it just never happens. A few locals are filtering in as we're walking out of here. And this is the stretch I caught the 6.5 on, and day 2, no bites. So it's time to get back. Make sure we get back on time. Ultimately get checked in here, put the boat on the trailer. They're doing kind of a trailered weigh-in, drive-through weigh-in, if you will, for day 4, which is always kind of fun. Bass is there waiting for you with the trailer, which is awesome. Get a few pictures on our way. Got a good crowd there in Okeechobee.
Top 10. He is a former Bassmaster Open winner from Detroit Lakes, Minnesota. Oh, Bob Downey. Oh, Bob had 51 pounds, 7 ounces to start the day today.
And that's a wrap. We ended up with 22 pounds that day, and moved all the way up into 5th place. So had a top 5. after a pretty brutal tournament on the St. John, so it was a great bounce back week. Moved all the way up into the top 30 in AOY points, so that was huge, and I got to bring a little bit of money home back to northern Minnesota. So I couldn't ask for a better week. I learned a lot on Okeechobee the year we were there a couple years ago, and to be able to apply it this year and kind of have a feel for maybe what might happen in this area, and then to have it come true on day 3 and 4 was really cool. You know, not the performance I really wanted on day 1 and the start of day 2, and really could have been another bomb. So I was super fortunate to get 2 big bites on day 2 and then to find a little bit more consistency throughout the weekend. You know, main patterns, we kind of talked about it. A swim jig with a cleanup craw really carried me. And then those 2 big bites was a 3/4 ounce tungsten weight, a 4/0 VMC HD straight shank flipping hook, and a creature bait, and just flipping around and being as thorough as possible. And I did, I think, weigh a fish on a frog on day 1 too. But that was my program. You know, practice was good. The first 2 days of the tournament, not great until those big flipping bites. And then days 3 and 4, we really kind of got to imitate what happened in practice, just in different areas. You know, my primary area that I thought was going to be the best, where I started on day 1, really kind of fizzled out for me. And I don't know if that was a conditions deal. You know, we had a nice warm breeze blowing in there in practice, and I think that's what generated a good bite there and maybe a wave of fish to move in there. But we were able to apply that pattern in a different area of the lake and made a good adjustment later in the tournament. So super happy with it. Like I said, got some good points, sitting good in AOY now, and hopefully have some momentum going into the rest of the season. I really like the schedule that we have coming up. Some new places. I have not been to either of these places, the Pasco Tank or Hartwell. Never been to either of them, so I like going to new bodies of water, fishing freshwater, and we'll see how the rest of the season plays out. But I'm happy to get out of Florida with a decent check and sitting okay in the point standings. So that's it for Okeechobee. You guys take care, and we'll see you on the next one.